It's recording as well. All right, so welcome everybody to this 2-hour webinar. I'm pleased to say that we have Dr. Ekkhardom Rödiger from the Schematherapy Institute of Frankfurt, Germany. He's been doing a lot of work over the last few years in regards to schematherapy for couples and relationships. So I'm very glad to say that we have Ekkhard for the next couple of hours. He's going to be talking about this topic. So we have a couple of hours to talk about this stuff. I invite anyone, if you have any questions, to put forward on the Q&A button. It should be down the bottom there. And then in the last 15 minutes, I'm going to select a few choice questions to ask Ekkhard. All right, so Ekkhard, over to you, mate, if I can do so. And you can raise your slides. I'm just going to go into the background. Yeah. Ekkhard, if you need me at all for any reason, you want to bounce something off me or some question or something, I'll be here.
Okay, here we go. This is my introductory slide. Okay, yeah, let me start here. It's not only about couples. It's also about including a partner of one of your individual clients into your individual therapy, because most of our clients are in relationships, and relationships have a great impact on the well-being of our clients. And if you just focus on the individual problems of your client, you might ignore two things: the impact of the relationship on the well-being of your partner, contributing maybe to his or her symptoms. And on the other hand, if you work with them to improve their quality of life, maybe make them more assertive or more going out or more demanding, going more for their own rights, which in many of our clients is the case, that they are too submissive, too detached, and you encourage them getting more active, this might or will surely impact the relationship. That means if you don't want to be surprised by the effects on your therapy, on the relationship, you might anticipate that in the sessions. So what I'm going to talk about also includes individual work, and you replace the partner with an empty chair, and you can go into the position of the empty chair to anticipate the optional or possible effects on your interventions on the partner and include it into your therapy plan. So let's go to this image. It's from Milo, and it's somewhere I was located close to Budapest. And for me, it shows the key mission of what we are doing, because people end up in these skeletons, disappointed, detached, frustrated, disconnected, but nevertheless in their heart, you can call it the heart, or inside of them, there is still a part who needs attachment, who wants to be part of life. And this part is lingering inside, being shut off from life. And what we do in therapy is that we ignore or bypass these front stage presentations, the skeletons, and try to connect with this more emotional, more vivid, more willing to live part inside of them. And especially, we have a lot of interventions, especially imagery, to connect people with these inner states. And you might call them child modes. I favor talking in a more descriptive way of the emotional part of the client. And we try to reconnect them in the session. And I will try to give you an impression how we do that in the sessions to create a new set point for the couples. And since they record all the sessions, or we invite them to record the sessions on their smartphone, they might take it back home and have a reference point. And if they listen to the recording, which might be one of the homework assignments, to spend one evening to listen to the recording of the session, this listening reactivates the emotional experiences they make in our sessions. So let's go to what is special in schematherapy for couples. Usually only one therapist works with two individuals. This is not always the case, but it's more effective. And finally, the most important point is that you get all the information you get from both individuals in your brain, and you can, or in your mind, if you favor a non-biological speech. So once you get both images in your mind, you can try to connect these perspectives within the sessions. We use a smartphone metaphor. That means one partner looks on one side of the smartphone, the other partner looks on the other side of the smartphones. They all are sure that this is the world because they see it. The problem is they have two different views of the world. And that means they're not in accordance. They will misunderstand from the start. So couples therapy is about, in the first step, making them aware they have their individual views, but they are distinct from each other. So what we need to do is to convince them, hey, if you want to be connected with your partner, you need to share their view. You need to turn the smartphone or make your way around the smartphone to the other side. And we first try to connect with both views, merge the views in our mind, and then try to build the bridge between the two riverbanks the clients are on. That's another metaphor you might use, building a bridge between riverbanks instead of dropping into the water. And we finally regard the two individuals as individual people. And we are not working with the system like the system therapy does, where we stay outside as an observer. We are looking at one person and another person and their interaction. The key of our intervention is the interaction pattern, their mode cycle. But this is the starting point. We finally work with the world inside and connect with the more emotional side and needs that are embedded in their bodies. We combine single and conjoint session with one therapist. This is something not all therapists actually do or think it's a good idea to do. But to do this translation work or reconnection work that I just described, it makes sense to be fully able to connect with one person and then fully connect with the other person and then merge the perspectives. There are some confidentiality issues about it. You need to inform the couple that what you talk in an individual session is primarily confidential unless the partner gives you permission to share it. Of course, we try to work towards a joint perspective, but in the beginning, there might be different points. And eventually, not every therapy is leading to a more increased or more intimate relationship. It might end up in a living together apart, and it's an arranged relationship where everybody has its own space for whatever they do there, but they share the well-working parts of their life. Or it might end up in a separation, and then not all information you get from one partner is necessary to be shared. So it depends on the process. We go with the flow, and then we will see where we end up along the way and how much both partners can contribute for a connection, or if they got stuck in a more separate way of life. We also have the option to do more work on one side of the partner, especially if you have a personality disordered partner. The baggages they bring into the relationship based on their schemas from their past, from their childhood, cannot be resolved in the couple's relationship because the incoming partner is not able to fix their childhood problems. In the worst case, they might adapt to their projections, and then you end up in a very deformed relationship. So it might make sense to work for maybe 10 sessions with one partner to work on the legacy from the past. And you could do that with the other partner as well. So you can work with two personality disordered people on a parallel track with maybe monthly couple session to keep the couple connected. But then you can work, the deeper work on the individual schemas can be done in individual sessions where people are more inclined to open up and show the full depths of their emotional world inside and all the problems they had as children. By nature, we as a therapist cannot remain in a kind of a neutral position. We are ambulating between a loyalty and connection with one partner in one individual session and the other partner in the other individual session. But our mission is to carry this both in our heart and then try to find the best connection and overlap between these two perspectives. And this is a challenging task, but if you give yourself the flexibility and if you're honest enough to stay with the flow and share what your concerns are, you do a lot of self-disclosure work. We can be very authentic, even if we are kind of torn between two perspectives. You can reveal this tornness to the couple or your ambivalence or ambiguity. This requires that you are very flexible and you're quite quick in percepting distortions in the interaction, stop them, stand up, put everything at the right place, go for better images in the future, for example. And you need to be kind of creative, but you're not responsible for the outcome of the therapy. This is something that takes a lot of burden from our shoulders, that we just try to, like a catalyzer, we try to induce possible chemical processes within the couple, but we cannot change them or actually behave completely different. We can just emphasize and strengthen their resources, but we need to accept their limitations, and we offer our limitations to the couple. So if it's not working well, we go into a creative hopelessness stance. This is an attitude taken from acceptance and commitment therapy, where we tell them, hey, I told you everything I could. And if you don't make use of it, if you don't practice, if you don't change your behavior, if you don't use your choices and always stay on the old path, then there will be no new path. And I can put myself in front of the running train. So at the end of the day, it's in your hands how much you make out of it. And there are my limits, and I can't help you more than I did so far. And giving back the responsibility about the process to the couple helps us to stay centered and don't take it personal if things are not working that well. And you need this kind of protection to avoid getting burned out and overcharged with all the negative emotions the couple might bring into your therapy room. And this is one reason why we strictly work with what happens in the therapy room or what the couple might bring into the room based on a clash a few days ago. But we work with what we see in the session, put it on the mold cycle, put it on the clash card, and then try to rebalance into a more cooperative, more functional way. And we allow ourselves being very directive and very active. So we immediately stop, or like Travis Atkinson put it, we catch the bullets. If one partner starts leashing out, hurting the other person, we immediately stop, ask them, hey, are you aware what you do right now? This is our miracle question to induce self-awareness, present moment awareness. Hey, what are you doing right now? And then we put it at the right place and say, hey, if you talk this way, this is red leg, this is dominant, this is pushing your partner. And you risk that they do the same. They push back, they talk back. So if you don't want to go into a conflict, you better use another wording. So we finally train the clients to be more aware, more mindful in what they do, how they speak, which role they take. And the key intervention throughout the whole therapy is getting aware of your activated, sympathetic, branch-driven, overshooting behavior, hold it back, go back into a more open, more cooperative, more giving in stance, because this is we call it the leg. I show you the model in a minute. Go to the blue leg, go for more connection, and then you will end up in a more flexible, more cooperative relationship. We base this approach on modules, and there are 3 big steps. The first step is the education about the model and to stop the maladaptive cycles. This might take 2 or 3 sessions. If the couple cooperate, you can go strictly to module 9 to 12, which are the reconnection and training modules, where you show them more cooperative behavior and in imagery emotionally reconnect them. If they are not that cooperative, there are these so-called intermediate modules for the externalizers, the more dominant, externalizing, pushy clients, where we try to connect them with a vulnerable self, or the more activating modules for the internalizers, for the detached clients, to help them to stand up, name their needs and expectations towards the partner, balanced with some offers they make. So we're going to pimp, kind of build up the more weak and detached clients, and we moderate the overshooting anger of the externalizing clients. And then you can continue with the reconnection and training modules. If they might feel triggered in the presence of the partners, and you can picture narcissistic clients, for example, when they're triggered by a partner, they constantly remain and reinforce her dominant self-justifying behavior. It's much easier to them to work in individual sessions and connect with a vulnerable side, bypassing their front stage coping modes. So then this might be a good choice for having individual sessions. Finally, on both sides. If you go to the details of the module, the first part is built up with the introduction of the model. This is what I will basically do in a minute. Then we connect the model with the cycle the couple shows, represented by the clash card, which is a very, very simple one-page case conceptualization. Then the homework is to stop the mode cycles. Just one of the partners who realizes the rise of the tension gives a little sign and says, hey, let's stop here. And either they wind themselves down, go back to an action on parallel tracks, stop talking and just do their business without struggling. If that's not working, they need to separate into 2 different rooms in a kind of timeout for an announced length of time, maybe 5 minutes, maybe 15 minutes, maybe an hour, maybe up to the dinner, where they moderate themselves, rebalance, and try to connect themselves internally with the purpose why they are in this relationship. What is the benefit of the relationship, instead of only looking on the difficult and challenging side where the partner pushes them into something. So this is like a kind of a mindful present moment state to check out from your spontaneous overshooting anger activations, step out into timeout, cool yourselves down. You might do this in the standing up position. If you are in your separate room, you can put up 2 chairs, just mirroring or symbolizing the 2 people. And you try to go into the observer mode we practice in the sessions with the therapist and get aware of Tom and Betty and get an outside perspective on the both of them, trying to get more overview and distance to the struggle you just left in the kitchen, for example. So this is something that you can carry over from the session into the private rooms to be in a different body position, actually float above the chairs, look down on the chairs, and try to get the full picture of the relationship. Once they are able to do that, we can ask them for their best day, for a vision, how they want to be together with their partner next week on the very good or best day. And this is also done in the session in standing up position. You stand up, both partners. I might introduce Tom, Sponge Tom, to you, and we have Betty. And they are my clients, and they stand to the left and the right of me. When we're standing up here, I can ask them, okay, Betty, bring up an image of your best day next week with Tom. Well, what do you want to do? Which day is it? What time? What you exactly will do with Tom? Then she gives an image, what she would like to do. And then you ask her, how do you feel? Is that okay? How do you feel in your body? Is this how you want your life with Tom to be? Okay. And then you ask Tom, are you in the image? How does it make you feel being in the image? Is there anything you want to modify to make it a good or best day for you as well? And then you can negotiate a little bit, helping them to create a conjoined image into the future, where they could go. And the homework assignment is, okay, next week, Wednesday, 8 p.m., you go to the Spanish restaurant and eat some tortillas, for example, or anything else. But this is how we try to work into the future from a balanced situation in the session. And this actually is possible within the first 2 or 3 sessions. Because we don't take the whole history, you might ask for questionnaires, but you don't have to. You're able to work just with a cycle presented in the room. I will come back to the cycles in a minute. I already talked about the reconnection modules, and the first module is conjoined imagery, where you start with a clash, and maybe Betty goes into her image and says, okay, what is your image now, Betty, when you see Tom clashing with you? Describe Tom's face. And you sit with the client, with Betty. Tom closes the eyes as well. Betty closes the eyes. And you bring up the image of the clash, Tom's face, his voice tone, his movements, his energy in the room. You ask Betty, how does that make you feel in your body? You connect with the body feelings. You float back in time. And Betty might bring up an image of her father beating her up. This is the same procedure you do in an individual imagery. The only difference is the trigger's Tom. It's a situation with Tom. And the second change is once Betty finds herself in this child position with a beating up father, we ask him, okay, what do you need now, Betty? And Betty will surely need somebody to protect her and help her to get out of that situation. And now we don't rescript the situation coming in as a therapist or bringing in Betty in the healthy adult mode. We now move over to Tom's side. Betty is on hold, and we ask Tom, are you in the image? Can you see Betty in her child situation with the father beating her up? How does it make you feel in your body? What is your impulse now if you see Betty with her father? And hopefully the impulse in Tom is to help her, to assist her. And then we invite Tom to move over to Betty's place, maybe shortly opening the eyes, but then closing the eyes again, and then connecting with Betty, hugging her, holding her, putting an arm around her and say, hey, you don't deserve that. You're okay. The problem is your father. He's drunk again. He's always expecting too much of you. You're a good girl. And I'm here now to be with you. You're no longer alone. Something like that. You might assist if Tom is too inhibited or doesn't find the best words. You might give some words. And the idea is that Betty now feels cared for by a helpful Tom, by a connecting Tom, by a blue leg Tom. If that works, that's the best possible outcome. In case Tom might feel reluctant to do it, this is an important diagnostic information that he's not able to activate his caretaking system for Betty if she's in pain. And this shows a good deal of disconnection within the couple. But that's not a problem, because given that, you state that and say, okay, Tom, you don't feel very much connected with Betty right now. And then you check in as a therapist and care for little Betty. So the session is always ending in a good way for Betty, either in a connection between Tom and Betty or revealing the disconnection, but then you support Betty to care for herself and maybe enter the image with her and rescript together with the adult Betty. You rescript the situation and care for little Betty. Actually, I never, ever experienced a partner staying that reluctant, but theoretically it might happen. In all cases where I did this imagery and all the cases I know from my supervisees, it works. I'll tell you why in a minute. Because we all have this inbuilt caretaking system. It's part of our biological setup. And what we do if we create this kind of perspectives or situations, we create images, perspectives where this inbuilt caretaking system is spontaneously activated. And this is why this exercise is a big gun in our work. And I'm going to show you some study results later. So based on this conjoint imagery, in the next step, we can train the healthy adult mode and, for example, help the client to step into the shoes of the partner. This is one part of the module. If they have difficulties to change sides, you can ask them, stop the cycle, stand up first. We always stop the cycle first and then stand up, because standing up means working in the healthy adult mode. Being in the chairs, acting out the cycle is automatic pilot. That's what the couple does all the time. We stop them, stand up, go to observer mode first, healthy adult mode, observing. And then instead of discussing the situation, we leave the semantic processing level and go into perspective changes. And a nice perspective change is to put all three behind Betty's chair. And now ask Tom, being in Betty's shoes, and you can see Tom coming into the session, and then you repeat what you saw in the therapy room about Tom's behavior. Tom came in quite energetic. He had a strong voice, determined gestures, and he leaning in front, and his eyes were sparkling. And then he talked to Betty and said something like, you're just a woman, you never understand that. And if you picture this Tom there, how does it make you feel in your body? And again, we don't discuss the content. We go to the body reverberations. We go to the resonances, emotional, physical resonances in the body. And I invite Tom to just connect with his body feelings. And this is just the first step from observer level, more trying to mentalize the perspective of Betty being in her shoes. And the more powerful version is to ask Tom to sit on Betty's chair. Betty sits beside Tom, just in an observer role. We sit in our position beside Tom. Now we're all three watching Tom. And then in the more powerful version, I ask Tom to close the eyes, Betty as well. I might do it as well, to get into the image at best. Tom, now can you see Tom's face? Can you see into Tom's eyes? Can you feel his energy coming to the room, talking to you? He's facing you, telling you, hey, Betty, you're just too stupid. You're a woman. You will never understand that. How does that make you feel in your body? Is your chest getting wider or tighter? Is your breathing getting easier or harder? Is the feeling in your belly more powerful and expanding, or is it weak and crumbling down? Is it a feeling of a cramp inside your belly or a fluffy feeling in your upper stomach? So you offer them these four options, distinguishing between the sympathetic branch activation, going more into anger, expansion, fighting, or into the more parasympathetic dorsal vagal branch activation, dragging your power down, push you into a parasympathetic state, into the paralyzed, helpless state. And if you offer them the options, even a not trained male who is not very well trained or skilled in observing their body reactions might feel that this induces pressure. And it should, because it's his intention. Tom's animal mode tries to booster himself up, be in the top dog role to impact Betty's self-esteem and put her down into the underdog position. But now, being in Betty's position, he feels the impact of this dominant gesture on his body. And this might connect him with Betty's view. And I can ask him, hey, Tom, if you feel a bit pressured, pushed, overwhelmed by this energy of Tom, which is meant to push you down, what is your impulse now? He might feel the urge to fight back, but then he understands why they end up in a fight-fight cycle. Or he feels the urge to escape and go into a detached protector mode. And then he understands why Betty's always checking out. So the third option, that he goes into a submissive role, will not happen, because then they would have a complementary cycle and they would not show up in therapy. Almost all the couples showing up in therapy are in a dominant avoidant cycle. Susan Johnson calls it the pursuer withdrawer cycle. These are about 80 or 90%. Only very few couples are in a detached role. And they come to therapy because these are dysfunctional cycles. They escalate. They might have short fight sequences, but this doesn't last. Nobody can fight for days. They will fall back into a detached, exhausted position and then start fighting again. So these are the cycles we see. I'm going to show you that in a second. Once they are able to change the perspectives, module 11, which is basically the last module, is training a connection technique that first, after one displays their side of the smartphone, the baton moves over to the other partner, and then this partner needs to repeat what they heard from the partner first before they add their side of the smartphone. And then the baton goes back for confirmation. If it's okay, they continue adding something more from their side. First repeat, and then they add something more. Then this partner repeats, adds something more. So it's always first the repetition and then adding something else. And the repetition guarantees that the content from one side of the smartphone is embedded into the brain of the other partner, because otherwise they cannot repeat it. If you want to be able to repeat it, you need to store the information in your brain, make it part of your brain, then you can repeat. So by using this technique, the brains of the client grow a little bit more together. This is building the bridge. And once they have some cycles of repetition where they just repeat, they don't fight the position. They just say something like, okay, I understand that you feel pissed if I come home late. Okay, I came home late because I need to work something for my boss. I couldn't escape, and I want you to accept it. Okay, I understood that you feel pressured by your boss, but that doesn't mean that you don't inform me. You could give me a message, but you just shut your phone down. Okay, I understand that you want me to inform you, but if I inform you, you always yell at me, and this puts me down and I can't continue my work. So I need that you stop your leashing out towards me if I tell you I'm late, and that you accept it. Okay, I understand you need that I accept that you come late and I stop my leashing out, but I could only do this if I know that I mean something to you and that you offer me something in return. Something like that. So this way of talking interweaves the two perspectives and helps them to grow to a joint solution, but in steps. Depending on the time we take, I will show you a slide about it. But what I did now is I rushed through the modules with you so you get an idea about the movement, how it starts with introducing the model to have a framework to work with the couple, put everything at the right place, stop the clashes, go for emotional connection, help them to change perspectives, and finally talk in a perspective connecting way. And the homework assignments, the last modules, is like a toolbox. And we offer after each session, the clients leave the session with an idea what they can practice. And if they don't practice, you go to creative hopelessness and tell them, hey, if you don't use the pill, it won't work. So if our pills are the exercises, if you don't practice a new behavior style, you will end up practicing the old one. If you don't engage in building a new track, there only will be the old track. And building up the track is important, and then you need to choose. Don't go the old track, use the new track. This is the main road. And if I just briefly demonstrate the intermediate modules to you, this means we start with the dominant client, and maybe Betty. Actually, in more cases, the women are the more active dominant partners, and they tell you about a clash. You stop it, you stand up, you ask for Betty's picture which role the Betty down there takes. Standing up means adult mode. Talking in third person about Betty helps them to disidentify from their emotional activation and look at it from an observer stance. Which role is Betty taking? And then you offer the three roles: the activated dominant role, the cooperative submissive role, or the detaching withdrawing role. This is taken from the animal model, and it's just the top dog, underdog, no dog role, or in the fighting, submitting, escaping, flight role. It could also be the freeze role, because freezing is also kind of escaping. So it's a fighting, surrendering, or flight, freeze in between as detached modes. These are the only three roles. And then Betty will probably accept that she's more in the activated dominant role. Then we ask for Tom's reaction, and Tom is usually, in the 90% couple, a detached Tom. And then we ask her if this is the desired outcome, and she will admit it's not. And then this is the short version, of course. And then I'll ask her, okay, Betty, are you willing to try something different, to have a plan B to connect with Tom? And then I ask her to have a sit on her chair. Tom sits on his detached chair, looking away. I sit with Betty, and I ask Betty, okay, Betty, now picture Tom walking through the door. He detaches, he walks out. You kicked him away. He leaves the door. He gets smaller and smaller and smaller. And now you can't see him anymore. And you will not see him forever. You go back to your apartment. You go back into your bed. It's dark. It's lonely. It's cold. Nobody's there. How does it make you feel now in your body? Is your chest getting wider or tighter? Breathing easy or hard? Do you have a powerful warm feeling in your belly, or is it a frozen, fainting feeling? How does it make you feel? And hopefully when she closes her eyes and pictures this fading out Tom, she might connect with the part inside of her who is still willing to connect with him. So we try to connect her with this vulnerable, attachment-oriented side by bringing up an image of the checked out Tom. If this is not working, okay, sorry, I need to add something. And once she connects with the vulnerable side, I say, yes, Tommy, Betty, you feel lonely. You feel what you need now if you feel lonely and lost again. And this is kind of a schema activation talk. Lost, lonely, helpless, abandoned, ashamed, failed. And you can use this schema activating wording with eyes closed. And you ask her, okay, what do you feel now, feeling lost, alone, failed? Yeah, you want to connect with Tom. Tell him that you miss him. And we support her by sitting very close to her, not leaving her alone. I said, yeah, tell him. And then you practice with Betty talking from the blue side, from the soft side, from the vulnerable side. And once she does that, you praise her and say, yeah, Betty, that's great. That's the first time I could hear you talk this way with this warm voice, and it moves me. It makes me, it touches my heart hearing you talking in this soft way. Stay with that, Betty. Great job. Then you move to Tom and ask Tom, did you hear that? How does it make you feel in your body when you hear talking Betty this way? And you can bet that he feels more inclined to connect with her. And then you ask Tom, do you want to get closer to this Betty, to this soft Betty? And usually he will. And then Betty wants to be connected anyway. Then you put them with closed eyes. Maybe they hold hands, maybe they hug, sometimes they kiss. And you said, okay, I close my eyes, or maybe I'll leave the room for 2 minutes. And you leave them in this way of connection. And they end the session with this sense of connection. And you ask them, okay, how do you feel now? Still eyes closed. Okay, that's the same Betty and the same Tom who entered this session 20 minutes ago. And you can do it. Your brain can do it. If you allow your brain to connect, the brain can. If you put all your critic voices out, telling you things are not good, and you go with your heart, with your blue leg, with your connection need, then you will end up this way. You have the chance to do it. And so the homework could be that, or maybe on a Wednesday the week, they listen to this recording, and so they have a set point. You carry this set point over to their apartment. They listen to the recording, and then they can bring up the sense of connection. Maybe they sit on the sofa and hold hands, look into each other's eyes and say, hey, Betty, we can do it. So you help them to create this connection moment at home as well. Honeymoon image is just a little booster. If Betty might feel reluctant to feel disconnected from Tom and lonely in her bed at home, and might say, yeah, I go for somebody else. Say, okay, Betty, this is escaping, by the way, but let's do something different. Bring up an image when you were in love with Tom, when you had your best day in the past. And then you create this image, like I described it to you. You ask Tom, are you also in the image, Tom? And if they are both in the image, same question. Tom, can you picture being closer to that Betty? And since they were close in those days, there will be a certain drive to connect again today, and you end up in the hugging position. Because you remember the skeletons and the child inside? Yeah, they can. They want to connect, and you give them the chance to do it. So this is how we soften up the externalizers, put their red dominant side a little bit aside, and connect with the blue vulnerable connection side. If we have an detached, anxious Tom, they need empowerment. So we do the opposite. We stop the cycle. We stand up. We identify Tom as the detached Tom. And yeah, you might turn the chair away. Yeah. And in this case, it might be interesting to add an additional chair. You put Betty on her chair. You might add an additional chair for Tom to sit behind the protector. But if you have only 2 chairs in your room because you work online, you could also ask Tom to sit on his protector chair and close the eyes and feel being behind the protector. So if you work in a room, you could add an additional chair, asking Tom to sit behind the protector. If you work online, like I do now, you just put Tom on his protector chair, close the eyes, and say, okay, Tom, now with eyes closed, you're inside. You sit behind the protector chair. How do you feel behind this protector chair? And he will say, yes, I feel safe because this wall, this protector blocks me off or blocks Betty off from me, and I feel safer. And then you can introduce an image and say, Tom, I see you sit behind this wall. I can see you feeling safe, and Betty's outside in front of the wall, and her voice and all her energy can reach you, and you're safe there. But let me ask you something. If you stay behind this wall forever and you will never be connected with Betty again, and maybe you will not be able to connect with other people if you want to connect, how does that feel, being trapped behind this prison wall? And he might take the image that the protector wall, who protects the vulnerable side, is a prison wall for his assertive, expanding, curious child side who wants to connect with people. And once he has the image, I offer him a compromise and say, hey, let's picture a medieval city wall with a big wall, but then there's a gate in between. And on the gate, on the top of the gate is your healthy adult mode. And the healthy adult mode decides when you open the door and when you close it. So you have a choice. When you want to be protected, you can turn away and protect yourself, detach, maybe go into timeout and say, Betty, this is too much. I need to protect myself now. I go to timeout. And once you reconnect with Betty, you open the door. And whenever Betty gets overwhelming, comes on too strong, you're going to go back to your protector side. But you have a choice. And usually clients like that. And then I'm going to invite Tom to work on his more assertive leg. And then we stand up. Betty remains seated, closing eyes. We also close eyes, go to the standing up position because I want to empower Tom. We stand beside his vulnerable chair. And now I ask him to bring up an image of being a big tree rooted in the ground, or a big, powerful person, maybe 10 feet tall, a warrior from a fantasy science fiction movie, or a hero from a fairy tale. And really connect with these body feelings. And based on these body feelings, when he really feels them, I ask him, okay, and now you see Betty over there, the little Betty, and you're the big, tough person. And now tell me, how do you want Betty to behave in a good day next week? What is she doing? How is she reacting on you? What are you doing? What are you saying? Give me that image, how you want it to be. And then he gives the image. He gives his expectations, his wishes. Then I say, okay, how does it make you feel in your body expressing these wishes? And then I say, okay, but Betty might feel a little bit pushed and overwhelmed if you just ask for this. What could you offer Betty in return? Because you know, Tom, life is always a game of give and take. And then once this is balanced, and I feel it might be balanced, what he's asking for and what he's offering could be like, when I come home, I need 15 minutes on my own. I can't start talking to you immediately. I need a little space. I need to come down. I want to be respected. Nobody talks with me the way you do. I deserve more respect. I want a little bit more space. And this is more the demanding side. And then I ask, what could you offer? Okay, I could offer spending some time with Betty. I could picture myself having a dinner with Betty. I could imagine bringing the garbage bin down, caring for the kids twice a week or whatever. So this is the balancing part. And once it's balanced, Tom talks to Betty's face directly. Betty, I want you to, and so on, and I can offer you in return. Once this is put out, I ask him to stay here, eyes closed. And then I move to Betty and I tell, okay, Betty, this is a new Tom, I know. Can you see him? Do you have your eyes closed still? Can you see him? Can you see this big Tom? How does this big Tom make you feel in your body? If you feel this in your body, and hopefully she feels more attracted and he likes him more than this wimpy Tom always detaching and running away. If you can see him, how does it make you feel in your body having this Tom asking for something but also offering something? Is that okay for you, or do you want to modify it a little bit so it's more appealing to you? Because sometimes it needs to give her the chance for some modifications. And if she modifies, you check back with Tom. Tom, do you feel safe enough and gracious enough to grant Betty this wish and modify your plan? Okay. And once they both feel okay with the image, you can ask Betty, can you picture getting closer to this Tom? And hopefully she does. And then again, you will end up with a hugging, with a discrimination. How do you feel now? How did you feel in the beginning of the session? How do you want to feel? Okay, you have the choice. If you open up, if you stand on both legs, you can meet and encounter each other this way. So again, it ends up with creating a connection. And this now are all the 12 modules. And the 13th module is about how to prepare a separation. This is our module toolbox. To deepen your understanding what I mean with talking about the red leg and the blue leg, I know this might sound a bit odd to you, but if you go to the still face experiment, you might know it. It's from Edward Tronick. I think it's from the 80s. It's an attachment video with a mother and a baby who's about 1 year old. And I uploaded an explanation where we connect this 1 minute, 48 second still face video with our model. And it takes about half an hour. And if you go to couples therapy, Schematherapie-Rödiger.org, this is our website. You go to the couples therapy section, go to videos, you find this 30-minute explanation. You also find an explanation about the smartphone. You find a tutorial about how our brain works and why it's so difficult to change the perspective. And for therapists, there are additional videos. There are more videos in the resource section where we demonstrate all these techniques, and you get more material like instructions and slides. So if you go to the website, you'll find a lot of information and material for you to deepen what I just told you today in a quite a rushing way. And the model we end up with is this two-leg model. And we reduced the set of needs Jeffrey Young describes to just two needs, which is the attachment need we call the blue leg, which means going into a parasympathetic stance, get relaxed, open up, trust people, get other directed, try to connect with people to feel safe in the connection with people. And on the other hand, we have the assertiveness side, going more for control, for autonomy. You're more self-centered, you're kind of a little bit antisocial, try to push your agenda through eventually against the will of other people. And these two needs are autonomous. You can't be fully in attachment, then you're going to sacrifice some of your assertiveness. If you're over-assertive, you'll lose connection with people. So it's like walking or balancing on two legs, or between two legs. And once your attachment need is frustrated, you will end up in vulnerable emotions, fear, sad. This is the basic emotions of Ekman. And if your assertive need is not met, you get more angry. So this is the red pole of the emotional spectrum. And when you're feeling fear or sad or vulnerable, you're more inclined to act submissively, cooperative, go to the blue leg. Or when you're more on the angry side, you're more inclined to fight, to get into a dominant position. If both is not working, you might end up in a flight freeze, the detached role. This is the model I already described to you in the demonstration, but this is the theory behind it. And you can see the two legs. And you need to think in terms of dimensional construct. It's not a boxy model. So if you go to the center position, and this is actually what the healthy adult mode is trying to connect the we and the me side into a we. This is Dan Siegel's wording. I take it from Dan Siegel. And we try to we try to balance flexibly. So when you are in the centered position, whenever you take an active role, try to create or do something, you're on the road to dominance. This is already red leg. And whenever you hold back, you stay cooperative, you give in, you submit, you're on the trajectory of the blue leg. So for example, if I talk, I'm on the red leg. Because you listen, you're on the blue leg. You might feel fed up and interrupt me, then you go to the red leg. And then I can decide, do I fight back and say, no, I was talking, or I say, okay, sorry for talking that long. Now it's your turn. And then I go to the blue leg. So we constantly balance red and blue leg in our social interactions. And another simple example is if you have a 2-lane road narrowing down to 1 lane. What do we need to do? We need to connect with the car beside us, and then we quickly decide, am I going or give I way to you? And then we have like a SIP-like balancing movement, taking one car from each lane to merge them into 1 lane. So this is the rhythm of life, is balancing between acting, reacting, giving, taking, doing, recepting. This is what we always balance in between. And this is exactly what you see in the first 38 seconds of the still face video, that mother and child are in this tango-like back and forth movement. And this is where we want to go when we feel happy. This is the happy child part, when we can balance and are in resonance with other people. This is where we want to go with a couple. And this is our model. It's just 2 legs. No more boxes, no more modes. There are no distinctions. It's just being more on the red leg or being more on the blue leg. It's extremely simple. And this is something the client can monitor in her healthy adult mode over the week between the sessions. We ask them to monitor, stop just for a second, get aware. Are you more on the activated side? Are you more in the cooperative side? Red leg, blue leg. And whenever you feel the tension coming, your sympathetic branch reacts, try to wind yourself down, go more to the blue leg, because this is the pro-social side. This is the side we connect with other people. That's the simple compass we give the couple. We talked about the cycles. So dominant submission is stable. It's the conventional role model. It's still existing. In some countries, we work with Iranian people, we work with Arabic people. They find themselves more in these complementary cycles, and they might be stable, but not everybody likes to be in the submissive role. So 80% plus are in a dominant avoidance cycle. I already mentioned that. This is a repetition. Fight is fragile. And finally, avoidant is kind of a burned out, blunted, settled state on a higher or lower level of functioning. Actually, to arrange a couple in a kind of a balanced living together apart style is an okay outcome for our therapy. But they should not be a frozen state where they are cold in their hearts. They should be more in an accepting state that their sense of connection is limited. Then it's okay. And they should not fight all the time. You have these like Martha and George and Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. They constantly struggle. And this is a stagnation which is not helpful. This is a detached couple. And we want to bring them more in a flexible, healthy adult state. So these are the typical cycles you're working with. And the main goal in our therapy is to stop the cycle, check out, go to adult mode, and balance as good as they can. Distance, closeness. That's the key balance they need to find. I can make this short because this is just what I told you. The mode cycle starts with an activated emotion in the back channel, in the backstage. And if Betty feels angry, she starts pushing Tom. When Tom feels pushed, he feels overwhelmed and tries to escape. He's escaping more, and you have an escalating cycle where Betty pushes more, Tom avoids more. This speeds up. Finally, Betty gets crazy and Tom checks out. So this is the mode cycle. this is an interesting couple. I don't show you the video. You don't need to see the video. You can, just from this frozen image, you can see the role, because I guess all of you can see that he's checking out and she's more or less skeptically acting behind him. And this is the poor therapist here. If you don't want to find yourself trapped this way, we can stepwise include the partner. And you remember in the beginning, I mentioned it's not about all or nothing. It's not about working with an individual or working with a couple. Whenever you include an absent partner into the therapy by putting an empty chair there and work with your client, you might also add a dummy. You might use a bear like this, replacing the partner, if it helps. If your client regards this as silly, you don't do that. But you could. And if you work with your client, you can practice like we did in module 8 to stand up more and express their needs toward the partner. And then you can do the role change and ask him or her to sit on the partner's chair. You sit beside them, ask them to close the eyes. How do you feel now being in Betty's shoes, Tom, if Tom talks that way? So like we can use the same exercises we use in couples work without the present partner, just offering the chair. We can do the standing up position. You can stand up and ask Tom, if we can see Tom acting this way, how would Betty feel? How will she react? What could we do to invite her more to feel part of the party? So we finally are able to use all the modules with an absent partner. And it will help to open the mind for more understanding of the experience of the partner. The next step is to invite the partner for a diagnostic session. You need to prepare your client that in this session, he will feel betrayed by you because you will be friendly with your partner. You will spend your focus of your attention will be on the partner. You will be very friendly because you want to get information. And after the session, they will feel pretty bad. And then you're going to fix that in the next individual session and show them the result of your work. But if you get an image from the real partner, this helps a lot because you have your own impression and the partner has the chance to show their side of the smartphone. And you will be able to integrate it even if you're in an individual therapy because you saw and heard her perspective and you can work with Tom to connect the two pages. If you do not see Betty, the partner, you're determined to only work with his selective smartphone perspective. And based on the garbage in, garbage out principle, you will swim in the stew that he cooks for you. You will never be able to see the other side. And this will set limits on your therapy. And it might subtly induce a perspective taking of Tom's side. And this will support his autonomy, but not his connection with Betty. So this is why an individual therapy as a side effect has a certain risk to end up in a separation because you reinforce the partner. They might feel safe with you and then they disconnect from the partner. But at the end of the day, you will lose them because you're just a transitory partner and they might feel disappointed once the therapy ends and they are still disconnected from their partners. So be careful. It's better to include the perspective of the other partner. And once they like you because you're a nice person, they like you as a therapist, they might be open for an explanation of the model you develop with your client. And you can share the mode conceptualization with the partner, and then they might understand more of Tom's perspective. And eventually they understand the purpose of your work and they might support it. And once they are open for a kind of change, you can work on the communication skills you observe between them, and you can maybe offer module 11, the connection to dialogue, just for the purpose of help them to have a better communication. And once they like it, you can open up the mode cycle model for their interaction of both of them, and then you're in a couples therapy. So you can see it's a slippery slope. And the more you're able to invite the incoming partner, raise some interest in the partner for the model, because it's a simple rational model, they see some effects, they feel good in the therapy, they might be interested to do more. And then you have can take a stepwise approach from individual to couples work. And this is what we already did, the standing up position. We analyze the mode cycle. We stand up, we stop the cycle, we stand up, put every mode at the right place, and then we might add the emotional part on both sides, and then they are both balanced. If you have much space in your room, you can add the chairs. But if you work online, you don't need to add the chairs physically, because when you ask them to close the eyes on their coping mode chairs on front stage, they connect with the backstage world inside their body, because the emotions, the child modes, are in the body. So you don't need chairs for them. The chairs are inside the body. So whenever they close the eyes, they get backstage and they can connect with their angry side or the vulnerable side. And by changing the images, you remember when Betty's on the red leg, we bring up an image of the fading out, leaving Tom, and she might get more vulnerable. Or you do the honeymoon imagery, they might get more connected and vulnerable. When Tom, we asked him to stand up and connect with his powerful side. Blue Tom on the chair, red Tom standing up position. So you can only work with 2 chairs for the client. You don't need more chairs. And they can put out these 2 chairs in their room. Then you can work online. There's a tutorial on the website how to do that. That you just work with 2 chairs, maybe in all 3 rooms. If they are in 2 separate rooms, they just need the 2 chairs and sit down on their chair. When they close the eyes, there are no chairs. And she can face Tom over there. Tom is in another room, but she can face Tom with eyes closed. You talk into her ears with your microphone and say, okay, Betty, picture Tom leaving you. He's fading out. You'll never see him again. How does it make you feel in your body? So if you combine standing up position, all looking down on the same chairs in the room, 2 chairs in every room, you have the same setup in each room. You can talk about Tom and Betty in each room. And if you close eyes, we are also all in the same room. So this way of working, standing up position, eyes closed, helps you to overcome all the obstacles resulting from online working. This is another beneficial part if you work this way. And the first important thing is, I made that point, stop the clashes. Try to rebalance. And this tool helps the client to rebalance. The coping mode is the displayed behavior on front stage, the social role they take. You define the both coping modes on front stage chair, ask them to close the eyes, connect with the feelings inside the body. For Tom, who is the detacher, they feel, if it's an anxious protector, they feel fear. If it's an angry protector, they also feel anger, like Betty. And this is the resulting cycle. To connect and balance the system, they need to connect with the other leg. Betty needs to connect with her constructive fear, with her sense of vulnerability, with the part inside of her who really wants to connect with Tom. And Tom needs to connect with his constructive anger, the part inside of him who wants to be respected, who wants to unfold himself, who doesn't want to be a wimpy victim. So this is his hero side, if you want to put it that way. So once they are balanced, you can ask them, what is your vision? Where do you want to go? And you go for the solution-directed modules. You connect them and go for balanced solutions as an homework. You go to the training modules. I already told you how we do imagery work. These are the steps. You get the slides after the training. And this is the little study. I have a few more minutes and I'm going to show you the study. We had 12 couples in 2 conditions, randomly assigned with 3 therapists, 7 sessions over 90 minutes every other week. And it's in crossover design. Either they had, after an introductory session, they had 2 imagery scripting sessions and then 2 cognitive interventions on the model, or they had the cognitive interventions first and then the imagery system sessions for both partners. And then we had an integration session and a follow-up. And this is the effect. The primary outcome was the felt sense of closeness measured with a visual analog scale. And you can see in condition 1 that the cognitive intervention didn't induce much change, but the imagery does. But it's fading out. Comes again, but it fades out again. In the other order, no big effect on cognitive sessions, but on the imagery sessions, but they are also fading out. Interestingly, after the conjoint session, where we put the experience, the emotional experience in the imagery work, connected with the model of the mode cycle, this helps us to bring both levels, the understanding semantic level and the experiential imagery level together, make meaning out of the image connected with the cycle, and then the effect grew again and rose over the follow-up period. So it needs to connect the understanding on a semantic level with the experience on the episodic level. And if you merge both levels of experience, it leads to a lasting effect. And imagery is more powerful than just cognitive intervention. It needs the experiential part, but the experiential part needs to be embedded into a well-working model that the client can carry with them, like the two-leg model. This is the connection dialogue slide, and you can see the movement are already introduced to you. You need a safe space in between. You need to respect the other side of the smartphone. Don't fight it, just accept it. Your partner has a different opinion. You start talking from your side of the smartphone, the other partner repeats, adds their side of the smartphone, then you give your next comment from your side of the smartphone, and in the first part, they just do that for 30 minutes twice a week, like going to a gym. It's to train your brain to be more open and responsive to the other person's perspective. They don't need to go anywhere. They don't need to find a solution first. Just give the baton back and forth so they don't interrupt each other. Confirm that the repetition was basically okay. And this twice a week, 30-minute practicing opens them up more for the other side of the smartphone. And it brings them into a kind of acceptance. And once they accepted that they are on different pages, they move from misunderstanding to not understanding because it's different. And from not understanding, you can try to build the bridge and go for wishes and say, okay, based on what I understood from your side of the smartphone, I still wish you to do this or that, or I wish that you give me permission to do this or that. And the other partner repeats the wish and might add a contribution and say something, okay, based on your wish and looking at my wish, I could picture doing this or that, or granting you this or that. And then you try to put each stone closer to the other, and the capstone finally is the contract they make about this situation. But be aware, start with a very precise situation. It doesn't work if you start with something like, you always blah, blah, blah. Talk about one specific situation. Yesterday we had an appointment. You came home at 8. You shall come home at 8, and you came at 9. And this pisses me off. And this is what I need to talk about. That's a precise situation. And you might end up with a solution that if Tom is late, he tells Betty beforehand, half an hour before the date they decided to meet, he can't make it. He tell her. He's going to be a tough person telling Betty, hey, sorry, Betty, I can't make it. I'm sorry. It was not my choice. My boss forced me, but I can offer you that we can spend the evening together tomorrow. I'll take you to a nice restaurant and then take this as a compensation. And this might work. And Betty might accept that she has an evening free today, but she has an appointment with Tom tomorrow. That's a simple example. But finally, this is the stage where the clients are enabled to solve their problems on a content level. The connection dialogue is about solving problems on a content level. All we did before, all the modules we did before are just meant to stop the cycles. all the previous modules are just stopping the cycles, rebalancing, and then we talk about solutions at the very end. We don't talk about content in the session. It's not about the content, it's about the interaction pattern. The problem is the cycle, not the issue they struggle about. You can struggle about the garbage bin who hasn't been brought down in time. You can struggle about anything, but the problem is not the content why you struggle. The problem is the red leg you're on when you're in a struggling mode and your partner doesn't give in and he fights or she fights back. This is the problem. So we stop the interaction pattern, we change and balance the interaction pattern, and then you can go for the solution on a content level. This is why we don't talk about content in the beginning. So finally, I already mentioned there are 4 directions, or 3 good directions where they can go. They can grow together, accepting their differences, making the best out of it, fertilize their lives with the specific assets everybody brings on the table, make the best out of it. They can decide to stay kind of halfway matching their needs, but doing things on separate tracks as well. So they take the best from 2 worlds. They can do things individually. They can do things in a joint situation. We try to overcome stagnation, and then it's better to separate. If they can't raise their level of functioning up to and living together apart, they might better separate. And this is actually the most prevalent outcome, living to help the client to accept the limitations of the relationship, but go with the gain. This is what most of the couples achieve. No, not all therapies end up in heaven, but we end up in a place on earth which is more comfortable than continue fighting all the time, which is hell on earth. So at the end of the day, there's always a second choice. If you decide to separate, you might end up with another partner better, but this is not the first choice. This is the last choice if nothing else works. So thanks for your attention. I kept my time frame. We have 15 minutes to talk, and now it's your turn. That's the book where you find the basics. If you want to see the modules are on the website. So if you go to the website, Schematherapie-Rödiger.org, go to couples therapy, you'll find all the modules who show you the practical application of what I did today based on this book, introducing all the fundamentals to you. So the combination of book and modules will do it for you. And you are invited to come to one of our trainings, which is starting again in, I think it's March. The next training starts online in English, and we do it in the day, so you might be able to attend. At least if you are in Perth, Sydney, you need to get up early, but this is an option you can make use of. It's the online training where we practice all these exercises together in small group breakout rooms. Yeah, that's my message for today. It was a bit fast, but as I know, there will be a recording. You will see the slides. You can attend the website. You can come to our trainings. There's much more to discover. And now to your questions.
Thank you so much. That was amazing. That was absolutely wow. I haven't seen that before, the way you integrate the chair work with the imagery within the same session. That's really, really cool. So thanks for sharing that, and for all of your energy and enthusiasm. That's really cool, man.
That's me.
That's it. And at what time did we start this in Germany?
This is now 8 a.m. I started 8 a.m.
So you started 8 a.m. Yeah. Okay. Well done. Well, I hope everyone can make some questions. All right. So you can use the Q&A tab at the bottom there to ask some questions. I've prepared some myself though, until that comes through. So whenever you're ready, Eckhard, I will ask a few questions. So you have Betty there next to you, of course.
Yes. These are my assistants.
Yeah. And I like these names too, Tom and Betty. Hopefully you don't mind.
In German, they're different, but we adapted it to an English-speaking
what is it in German? What is it in German?
Susanne and Peter.
Okay, cool.
It would work as well, but they're typically German names. And Tom and Betty, especially Sponge Tom is great, isn't he?
It's amazing. I took a bunch of screenshots with you, like holding these things.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm just checking out if folks can ask some questions. But Some that came to me as we went along. I like the kind of conjoint sessions and moving between individual sessions and conjoint sessions. I wanted you to say a few things, though, about the limits of confidentiality in the case of like when there's affairs.
That's tricky.
So I know it's a tricky issue, but if you could say some things about that.
Yeah, thank you for bringing this up. This is actually what I did today is covering basically just the standard framework. What we do if we do the training, the first half of the training, we convey this standard procedure to our participants. And of course, there are many, many pitfalls and challenges with specific couples, and having an affair is one of them. Actually, in my practical work, affairs don't play that big role as all the people think. Most couples are able to torture each other without affairs. They just hurt each other everyday life. They the elephant in the room, it's not obvious. You will get stuck. You can address this getting stuck, and then you might end up your therapy without connecting. But I'm not so fond of this outcome that you go with the flow and you don't open up a concealed affair. So I favor, if, for example, Betty has an affair, she tells me in an individual session, and then I'll tell her, okay, Betty, let's give ourselves time for maybe 4 weeks, and we're going to work helping you dealing with your ambiguity, what the affair means to you, what the affair offers you. Are you willing to sacrifice it to improve your relationship, or will it lead to a more separate stance between you and Tom? And I could tell Tom, I think I need maybe 4 individual sessions with Betty to work with her insight, with her personal side of the smartphone, maybe with her schemas. So we have a certain safe space to work. And Tom is in a kind of on hold. But I cannot do this forever. After, let's say, 3 or 4 sessions with Betty, she needs to make a decision where she wants to go. And then we are in a very delicate situation. If it might end up in kind of living together apart construct, because Betty doesn't want to sacrifice this affair or some space on her own. It's not only the affair, it's only it's also having a private life beside sharing everything with Tom. I might end up telling Tom, okay, I see your chances to grow together as kind of limited. It looks for me as if we are it's more promising to go to an arranged relationship. And this means that there is some privacy on Betty's side and some privacy on Tom's side. And this is why I cannot share all the content with Betty's session with you. Is that okay for you? Are you accepting that we go more to a living together apart situation? And then I have a formal frame to keep kind of confidentiality, and Tom will not feel betrayed because he knows there are some confidential issues. But then I need to adjust the framework of the therapy and the goal of the therapy to the process we make along the way. But it gives me time to adapt to the process. This is why I favor this, to take this road. But I know in America it might be difficult because you might get a lawsuit because you didn't reveal all the information. So you need to go for a kind of informed consent with both of them, that they agree to a limited transparency and openness about the personal content. But maybe they agree, and then I think you're okay.
Yep. So it's more of an informed consent issue. It's something that you're open about at the beginning, that we have to respect the individual sessions to a degree as well. Otherwise, the process would be not necessarily working. Yeah, very cool. Let me check some other questions here. I noticed in your slides too, you were talking about these different interactions, like you had like anger, or like dominance, detached, these different configurations.
We call it mode cycles. Yeah.
And then healthy, like these kind of things. And and you wanted to get to a stage where you had healthy, right?
Yeah.
One thing I wondered was missing, perhaps, like when, or even in many relationships, you might basically get healthy detached or healthy dominant, where you've got one party which might be overdoing maybe the avoidance or one of the other strategies, and basically one healthy party. What do you think about that? I mean, that's how I would see. That's more common, no? Like in most, because I guess it's sort of said, the way you place it, it was sort of like, well, when you don't have these negative like interactions in the normal population, then you get like healthy. But I suspect that many, if not most couples would have like healthy and then.
Of course, you're right, Rob. But I'm smiling because almost every client in a coping mode will regard themselves as healthy. That's the problem. Because, if you have a dominant partner, a narcissistic partner, he says, hey, I'm just right. But when he says, I'm just right, he's dominant. Yeah. And the point is, of course, it's playing with labels. But you remember, we try to get out of the labeling. We said it's a trajectory. So even a healthy adult is more a reddish adult or a bluish adult. The coin is not resting on the edge. It always tumbles more on the active side or on the responsive side. So finally, it's about the flexibility. Yeah. And the problem on the coping mode level is they get stuck in their role. And this is why we all working this way. In the first step, we stand up and get out of it and say, okay, now we're observers. And healthy adult mode is built up by 3 steps. Mode awareness, observing and accepting the activated mode. Mode balancing, and this is the flexible part, from a centered contextual perspective, seeing the whole picture. And then we make the mode choice and say, okay, now it's better to be more on the blue leg or more on the red leg. So this is another ABC model: mode awareness, mode balance, mode choice. But these are the 3 steps the adult is taking. So the question, is it a coping mode or an adult mode, is just about the flexibility. And this is what we both know from acceptance and commitment therapy. You're trained in ACT as well. So when I'm flexible, I'm in the healthy adult mode. And I can figure it out as the therapist. Standing up here, you get space to move. It's so helpful to be in the standing up position. You can move, you can turn around, you can jump a little bit to get back to the present moment awareness. This gives you flexibility on a body level, and flexible bodies are more flexible in their minds. So this is why we get up here and we don't talk on the chairs. You can see that in all the sessions. When you sit down here, you're trapped. Everybody's justifying their positions. They think this is the only way to behave, but it's just one network.
It's just a position
in the brain. It's just a position. It's one network, and the other networks are disconnected. They're switched off, because the brain tends to remain in the given current state. We don't want to change all the time. This is why we are trapped in our brains in the sitting position. And when you stand up, you regain your flexibility. It's much easier to get a conjoint view on Betty and Tom if you're observing from the outside. And this is why we go here. And then you can change the perspectives. And a person who is flexible and able to change a perspective, they are healthy. And if they are not flexible, they are not healthy. Whatever they pretend to be in, it's not a flexible position. And you can show that in the standing position. You can show Tom, okay, Tom, but it's not about right or wrong. Maybe you're right, but you're kind of insisting in this position. Now let's move over here to Betty's position. How do you feel facing a person who's always right? And then you can see if he's able to change. And if not, you tell him it's not that easy, Tom, huh?
Yeah.
So this is how we distinct.
Yeah. I really love that. I really got that off you, working with you, Eckhard, in standing up and hovering above the chairs. It makes a real big difference. It makes a really big difference just to say, let's look what's happening
in your body.
Here.
We use the body reverberations because the body posture kind of traps you into a coping mode. Most of you might know this old Ackman experience. Try to put a smile on your face and feel depressed. It's not working. because the body traps you in a kind of activation state. And if you give body space to move and change, it's much easier to do the mental changes as well, and the emotional changes. It's all one thing. It's one instrument. We pull the string up here, but the sound comes from the body. And this is why we do more body work now. We work on both poles. Observer pole, checking out adult mode. This is the act part, but we also do somatic experience, and we connect with the body. What do you feel there? Okay, what is the posture? Okay, change it. And then something happens in your brain. And this is deepening the work and raising. You raise to an observer level and you deepen it because the schemas are in the body. Yeah, we don't work that much with the resulting coping modes because this is downstream. We go with the body feelings because the body carries the schemas.
Yeah, I can really see that. There's certain questions you're asking, which is trying to get the healthy adult online.
Yeah.
So whether that's questions or saying, actually, let's stand up now, let's take a perspective, or certain things you'd say, and now how does that feel in your body now when you hear this or when you say this? So I can see you really connecting the client with the healthy adult or getting it online.
I'm not sure if I got your point, because there's no difference if you work online or offline.
No, what I mean online is getting it online, like getting it to work.
Like getting it activated.
Reconnecting them to it. It's another metaphor, right?
Yeah. I got it. I'm a stupid German, you know. you need to tell me twice so it gets. So I get it. Now, the point is, it's not only adult and imagery. You can combine it. If you stand up, you're basically out of your body state. So you're rising above the automatic coping mode position down there. You regain flexibility. So you drive the elevator up to observer level. But then you can close the eyes in the observer level and can connect with your body again from an observer level. Because now you can, once they are out of their body, they're open to perceive more details, finer. And you can move them over. For example, if you go to the best day image in the standing up position, module 4, about the future, you disconnected them. They come struggling into the session. Yeah. They talk both at the same time. They fight with each other. You ask them, hey, stop that, stand up, cool down first. Okay. And then they get more into a centered position. And then you ask them, by closing the eyes, bring up an image of your best day next week. This means I go into an image to release a body reverberation, but a positive one. So I start diving into the image from the standing up position. It's like getting them out first, getting in a flexible state, and then I help them to dive into a body feeling again by closing the eyes. And then you can ask them to sit down and say, okay, now connect deeper with that feeling. Yeah. Let it move through all your body. So you can put the elevator up, observer position. When you close the eyes, you're driving them down. And when you ask them to sit in a position, they more and more get fixed in this position. So this is one axis we are working on. Getting in a mindful observer stance, getting out, or getting into an embodied feeling state very close to schema activations. And this is how we moderate the process of emotional activation. But the flexibility is in the standing up position. The deepening is in the sitting position, where we really dive into it.
Am I getting this right? So this imagery thing that you just talked about, it was like getting them to think about a good interaction or a wish, you know, in their relationship the next week. This is connecting them with their needs. This is connecting them with their wishes in the relationship.
Yes.
And the healthy adult. So it's an imagery way, just a quick, short circuit. Okay, let's reconnect to the reason we're here.
Yeah. Yes. The reason we're here and the reason you started the relationship 20 years ago. So the honeymoon imagery brings them back to a connection experience in the past. You create a connection experience in the future, but finally you connect with the brain networks representing the good interaction, and you create a hidden shortcut between body feelings, images from the past, and make it something happening tomorrow or next day. And this is the secret, that we don't build up the resource. We activate an existing resource and back channel, make it hopefully make happen the same feelings which are already in the network next week.
So this is the positive schemas.
Yeah, you can call it a positive schema. You can also call it a network, or you can call it whatever. But you can call it a positive schema.
Yep.
I'm not so much on labeling, because I expect there will be a list of 18 positive schemas now, and I'm not boxy, I'm thinking in terms of images, in terms of dimensions, in terms of dynamics. And this is more my problem.
It's a very useful perspective, though, Eckhard. Another thing that came up was, like, with personality disorders, you'll often get, hopefully you don't get two people in the relationship with a personality disorder. It can happen. But
it happens.
So I won't ask you that, but I will ask you, when you have one person with a personality disorder and then another party that's more or less healthy, any implications for the couples therapy in terms of the amount of time you spend with one party?
Yeah, thanks for bringing this up. You're catching up with the point you made already before I responded. You remember when I talked about the slide, how we connect an incoming partner with your individual client. I think in many cases, we start with an individual client who came to us based on some personality disorder-based interactional problems, because they don't have the problems only with their present partner, but also with other people. And so they might come to your therapy and say, hey, I have a problem with whatever. And if you invite the incoming partner, the incoming partner might be more flexible, more balanced, so more healthy adult mode. And you can state that and say, hey, you're more flexible. You are not that burdened. You didn't have to face these hardships in your life. You're lucky. But Tom, unfortunately, has a bigger baggage to carry. How about helping him to improve, because you have a connection? And then why not ask the incoming partner for some support and tell them, hey, whenever Tom gets angry again, give him the time out and say, hey, Tom, that's too much for me. Give me a break. I come back in 15 minutes, and then you work on your angry partner who has an overshooting outburst of anger to accept the time out, knowing she will be back in 15 minutes. If she promises, come back in 15 minutes, he will learn to trust that. And then this supports your emotional moderation or emotional regulation work if the partner develops reliable, predictable behavior. But if you instruct them, this is a winner.
I'm just laughing because I remember you're talking about the timeout, and I've worked with people when you first introduce the timeout, and one party, of course, they use it to detach.
Exactly. It's the same that happened with me. I thought detaching is good, but it activates the abandonment schema. So you need to balance give and take. You get the time out, but you give the guarantee coming back in 15 minutes, because this is what the abundant partner needs to accept the time out. So it's always the combination of give and take, asking for something, offering something, balancing between blue and red leg. And even in the timeout, it needs the reassuring second part, I will be back in 15 minutes or maybe in 5 minutes. Yeah. And if it's an hour or half a day, then it's because the anger was so much overshooting. But you need to be transparent. It's always about the two legs. And timeout only works if you promise to reconnect and you keep the promise.
Makes
and
sense.
This is not detached. This is healthy adult detaching. Healthy adult
healthy boundaries, healthy.
In terms of flexibility.
Eckhard, can I get you to click on the Q&A? There's a question here from a Sonia, and maybe it's best if you read it other than because it's quite long.
So go to the chat, right?
Yes, Q&A.
I have individuals who come to therapy at last resort before leaving their partner. They share that their partner is aggressive in conflict. That's the red leg side. Responding. Okay, I think I just need to talk to respond in real time.
So I don't think anyone else can see this. So we just have to say the second piece.
Okay, so, in a nutshell, it's sometimes couples behave different at home than they do in the therapy session. So the lion comes in as a mouse into the therapy session, but that's not a problem. If that happens, I ask them, okay, Tom, I can see that you're fairly cooperative here today. And I appreciate that, because this shows me that you are flexible. You can adapt to a situation. So here in the therapy room, you're pretty cooperative, and that's good. But Betty told me that at home, things sometimes are different. So now let's work with the situation at home. And Betty, could you please, now we all close our eyes. Betty, could you please bring up the image, what happened yesterday evening when Tom came home? Tom, am I right? You drank a little bit when you came in? Okay, so we have a little bit drunk Tom. And now let's look at the image that happened yesterday. And then Betty gives the image. In the worst case, Tom is not agreeing. And you say, okay, Tom, now it's your turn. Give me your image. And then we do the smartphone thing. We have two images in the room. And this is not a problem, because this is just the reality. And once you have both images, you have the cycle in the room, because Betty will justify her detaching and Tom will justify, in quotations, his overshooting dominant role. Then you stop it, you stand up, you open the eyes and say, okay, now let's talk about this Tom and this Betty down there. It's not about us. We're just observing, you know, we come into their living room. It's yesterday, 9 p.m. or 10 p.m. And now we observe what has been going on there. And now you can create a conjoint image from the outside. And this is the starting point, the basement of our solution-directed work. Once you have this mode cycle in the room, you can label it as a more activated, more dominant Tom and a more maybe passive-aggressive Betty. Usually, if it really is a hot clash, Betty is not a victim. She's in a contemptuous, down-putting protector. Yeah, and then they are red, and that's fine. And then from the outside, they understand this will escalate. And then we can go for connecting with the blue leg. I can ask Tom, okay, Tom, sit down on your chair. Betty, you're in your contemptuous protector, a little bit turned away, maybe halfway turned away. And then I can ask Tom, okay, Tom, what happened before you got drunk? No, or what happened when you were in your bed on the couch because Betty kicked him out of the bedroom? How do you feel now being on that couch? And I try to connect to the vulnerable part. Despite the story, just connecting with his blue side, his need for attachment. And then he might say, I feel sorry because I love her, I need her. And I'm so sorry that again, I failed and drank. And then I go to Betty and say, okay, Betty, can you hear it? And then she says, yes, I hear it, but I can't trust him. This is a typical response. And I say, okay, Betty, but which leg are you on if you say, I hear it, but I can't trust him? Yeah, you're on the detached, red, critical, skeptical, controlling, detached side now. This is okay. But tell me, what could Tom do else to open up your heart, to convince you that you try again to connect with him? Nothing. Okay, but then this sets the limit. And maybe, or we can do the perspective change. We can stand up and stand on Tom's chair and say, okay, be on Tom's chair. How do you feel being in Tom's chair with this Betty over there who's not trusting you? And she might feel his anger, his upcoming anger again. So you can work with the perspectives. And after you played that out on the chairs, you can stand up again and say, okay, what do you think they could do? You can invite a best friend of Betty. Say, do you have a best friend, Betty? Yeah, it's Magda. Okay, Magda, what do you suggest Betty to do? What do you see is the future of this relationship? So from the outside, you can get into a contextual view again. You can figure out where they might go. You can do time projection. You can ask them, okay, close your eyes now. The clock moves on 1 year later. Next Christmas 23. How would that look like? Will they still be together? Is it good for them to stay together? Maybe it's better to separate. You can bring all these options in this free space up here. You can invite best friends, asking them, do they see you together in a year? Or are they skeptical? And then you can decide how much connection is Betty willing to offer. And you might end up with an experiment. You say, okay, Betty, I know you're skeptical. Tom drinks for years. He always has his lapses. But what could you give me an image? What could help you trust Tom a little bit? What are the requirements Tom needs to fulfill, or the prerequisites Tom needs to fulfill that you give him a second chance? Or maybe the fifth chance. The point is, there is no sense in arguing and discussing. You need to work with the images. And based on the image, picture an image, picture a good Tom. What does Tom need to do to be a sufficiently attractive Tom so you can stay with him and trust him at least a little bit? And then you define the conditions. And then Tom gets a list of things he needs to do. And these are stepping stones for future directed work. If he delivers, you can go back to Betty and say, Betty, Tom delivered.
So there's room for behavioral work on this.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, that's the point. At the end of the day, it's about behavior change. We create balancing. We set the tracks, what they need to do or what they could do. We give them homework assignment, which is preparing behavioral change, and then they need to do it. And Tom is not delivering. I go to creative hopelessness and say, Tom, I'm sorry, but if you don't take the pill, it won't work. If Betty is not trusting, she takes the higher ground and says, I can't trust you anymore. She stays on the red leg. Mm-hmm. Like the still face child, the child in the last 12 seconds of the still face video looks at the mother. Mother comes in and says, I'm here, and what are you doing? This is the partner after the affair. This is the drinking Tom who tries to stop drinking. And then the child says, I can trust you. Okay, a second later, the child opens up because it's a securely attached child. But and I stop the video at that point, if the child stays like that, it's like the Betty, I can't trust you anymore. You hurt me. Once bitten, twice shy. Yeah. And then she limits the process, but you can reveal it. And then you can ask her, Betty, what could Tom do else? And if there's no idea, then I tell her, hey, Betty, you're stuck in the past. You're dwelling with past experiences. We both know that, Rob. Or she says, yeah, he might do it again. But Betty, this is worrying about the future. Look what happens day by day. And then you can find a new way. If you allow your mind to run ahead too far, there's no future. If you get stuck in the past, there is no future as well because you're stuck in the past. That's about present moment awareness. And this is why ACT is so important for our work, because it gives us the healthy adult mindset to be in the present moment. And then they need to practice. They do behavioral experiments. Exactly.
Do you think, Eckhart, that we are, to what degree are we changing people's attachment styles?
Well, there's research about it. I think, and the research tells us, you cannot undo the imprints in the network, because we know the brain builds up at least for the first 2 years after birth. It's like a mold. It's very flexible. And all these attachment experiences become part of the hardware of our brain. It's not the operation system. It's the hardware. So this is where the limitations are. But there's good news. If you build up a healthy adult layer of networks later, you can kind of conceal these underlying or buffer these underlying networks by a layer of secondary build-up experiences and behavior responses. Yeah. So you can develop something called an achieved, securely looking attachment style.
So you move someone from basically looking like avoidant more in the direction of healthy.
Yeah.
But the overall imprint is there. And if something goes wrong,
there and it's fragile.
They might retreat.
When you get Alzheimer's, you will fall back to your paranoid style. When you have fever, when you're tired, when you have a migraine or whatever, usually the underlying patterns get
when there's an affair,
again.
When there's a big challenge.
Yeah, maybe an affair. Yeah. It pops up. But then you can put it at the right place. You say, okay, now the volcano erupted again, the earthquake happened. But hey, the healthy network is still there. It's not about either or. You have choices. Now you're connected with your abandoned, mistreated, abused child network. But all that happened in the last 10 years is a reality. Your brain also stores the healthy connection. It's not a true self and the false self. This is, sorry, Winnicott, that's bullshit. This is really a judgmental stance. It's not an observer stance. There are two networks, and the false network is one network, and the true self network is another network. They're just different networks, and you can choose. You can strengthen your functional healthy adult solution directed cooperative network, or you can go back to your self-defending skeptical, paranoid, over controlling network, which is usually a compensation for a very vulnerable underlying child network. And that's your choice.
Weird question. I have a weird, not a weird question, but a slightly off. How do you work with issues to do with sexual intimacy, either where, you know, folks are not connecting sexually, or there's a mismatch in sexual arousal,
desires? Yeah, and that's another. It's
another 3-day workshop, probably.
Yeah, it's another 3-day workshop. We can invite you for another 3-day workshop. No, these are the hot stuff questions, of course, and I'm not an expert in sexual issues.
Sure.
I have my own practice, but I'm not an expert. But what I can tell you is what I like are these snark exercises. You might know them from the book Intimacy and Desire. And they have the idea that you need to create a certain sense of connection and intimacy so people feel safe enough to open up for new sexual experiences. This is something which is very convincing to me. So what we do in therapy is we create emotional connection. We create an atmosphere of safety, of negotiability of issues. This is what we go to with our modules. And once we are there, we open that up for sexual interactions. And there are basically two things. One thing is about control. The reactive, you usually have one more active partner, red leg, and a more responsive reactive partner, blue leg. Yeah. So the blue leg person needs a certain amount of control to stop the active partner so they feel sufficiently safe. Even sadomasochistic relations do that. They have a key word to stop. Mm-hmm. So this is important. It's about a minimum of control to feel safe. This is one thing that you establish like a traffic light system. Green, okay, go on. Red, okay, stop. Yellow, do slowly, and we'll see. Yeah. So this is something that you can establish with the partner. You can use hand signs. You can use.
It's interesting because the way you talk about it, like the model we've talked about today, is about emotional intimacy and emotional safety.
Yeah, that's the starting point.
And it sounds like the sexual part, the physical intimacy stuff, is almost like a different need or something.
But I think I don't believe that in Freudian idea that sexuality is a need like eating or sleeping. I think it's one way to connect very strongly and very much connecting, but it's played out in the field of red and blue leg. So there's nothing beyond red and blue leg, and sexuality displays itself into a more active role and a more passive or responsive role. And usually it's a give and take thing. Yeah. And the second part, beyond control, is that you just need to do it. You need to get the critic modes out, these controller modes who tell you, oh, you can't do that. Oh, this is ugly. Oh, this is sticky. Don't go there. Just do it. And don't wait for the miracle to happen that both of you have the overflowing desire and the situation is right to do it. You know, it might be the elevator. So something we tell them is, like you practice connection dialogue, you practice sexual interaction. Yeah. Try to do it once a week, and you can make an appointment for a sexual interaction. Why not? Yeah. It's a body.
You have to make time for
thing.
it. You have to make time for it. Yeah.
Yes, you need to make time. You have an appointment, and then you slowly try to encounter each other. You start caressing, maybe taking a bath, doing something which emotionally creates a containing situation. And then you just go into it, and based on the traffic light thing, look at how far you can go. But do it. Don't wait that it strikes you like armor's arrow. Go there.
Look, this is related. I have a related question. This is the final question. I think we draw a line, okay? But I think it's an important one. And I want to ask you because of your background in couples, but also your precision in the schema model. Can you give me a very clear, in your own words, description of schema chemistry using this model? Because you sometimes get people who say things and they come with a couples issue. I really know this person X is the right person for a bunch of reasons about my needs. I just don't feel it. I don't feel the chemistry part. But I'd love to hear your idea about this. Yeah.
Well, this is a complex issue. This is another 3-day workshop. But
Okay.
to make a long story
so
short,
in 30 seconds,
in 30 seconds, chemistry, I think it's an important contribution from Jeff to think in terms of chemistry. And I understand chemistry as fitting modules, like a chemical structure. It means this is based on our internal working model we built up in childhood. This is the old network, because I somehow feel attracted to what I know. This is the match. So if I experience dominant father, dominant mother, there is a certain inclination to feel familiar with that. And this field means I feel attracted to it. It's a fit, and this is part of chemistry.
So
and
if somebody's red leg, like you say, you're attracted to blue leg in a sense, or?
Yeah, maybe. But for example, I have a very dominant mother and I married a dominant wife. Of course, she's sufficiently different, but there are some traits, and over the year, they became itchy, and we need to work on it. And on an adult level, we are able to communicate it now. And I can set limits when I perceive her as coming on too strong, and she sets me limits when I get too strong myself, because in a compensatory movement, I became dominant myself. So it's like a fight-fight situation. So the problem is you have a certain match based on your schemas, based on your role model, internal working model. And like Jeff pointed out, a medium match of chemistry is the most promising thing. If it's too much, you end up in the old automatic pilot cycle. If it's too less, you might like the person, but you will not feel a physical attraction, because this is deeper. Physical attraction is on a body level. So if you like a person, but she's not sexually attractive, it might be a friend, but not your intimate partner. You might end up, and Esther Perel would like that, you have a friend and you have an affair for your sexual desires. Our conventional model is get all from one person. And I think this is the safest way to have stable, reliable relationships. But there might be people ending up making a decision. Do I accept being together with a person who is a good fit at an emotional level, but not on a sexual level? And then they might sacrifice the sexual level or just masturbate on that. Or they decide, okay, I want to buy something in addition and have some sexual activities outside of my relationship. But this is a living together apart arrangement. And young people are more open for these kind of arrangements, as I am with more than 60 years old now. I'm on a conventional role model. I'm too jealous to allow my wife to do that. So, but maybe people are different, and it's up to them to decide, do I try to get all from one person with limitations, or am I splitting up my relationships and says, I take this here, that there, and I do sailing with Rob because he's a great sailor. And my wife gets seasick when she goes to sea. So this is something the couple needs to define on their own behalf, and it's not about us to judge about it. It's an informed consent thing.
I love it. Eckhard, mate, I think you've given us enough of your time and energy. Absolutely loved it, mate. Love talking to you again. I'm sure everybody would say thank you as well in the webinar. So I hope to see you around the track. Now we're just going to
we meet in Melbourne, I guess.
We'll be seeing each other soon at Enlight. Yeah, it's only in a few months' time for those that are going to be there as well. You'll get to see Eckhard and other folks traveling from overseas. Eckhard, thank you so much for coming and talking to our people. And
thank you for inviting me.
We enjoyed hearing about it. Yeah, we'll talk soon. Okay? Yeah. Awesome. Take care, guys.
Bye-bye, Rob.
See you, everyone.
All the best for you.
See you soon, Eckhard. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Guys, bye.
Rob, are you still there? Because the recording is still going. Oh, it's me.